tonight. This is the city's first virtual briefing that is being conducted during the COVID-19 pandemic national emergency, not just local. We have three topics that we would like to discuss with council tonight. Hopefully this council briefing will not take longer than about an hour. This is really exploratory for this technology to prep us for ultimately future use at a council meeting, hopefully next Monday on the 20th. We would be conducting a full meeting using this format. So this is our first foray into using the Zoom platform. Hopefully we have outside observers who are watching us as well. And to all of them, we say hello. The three topics that we want to cover with you tonight are the review of the 2019 police statistics and specifically the increase in calls for service. The second is the 6-month update by the city attorney, as was included for and required by his contract. And the third item was to have a conversation with the council about some of the recommendations that we're looking at from a staff perspective in order to start providing some financial relief to certain elements of the community. So the first topic that we're going to talk about again is the police statistics. Many of you may remember that back at the end of January, there was the accumulation of the police statistics for fiscal year 2019. Notably within there was notable increases in calls for service of multiple types across the board within the police department. At that point in time, I asked Chief Smith to do an analysis, do a deeper dive on the data to come to some determinations of what was driving that increase in calls for service that they were seeing within the police department. Approximately 6 weeks or so ago, council received a memo put together by the police chief. And that multi-page document took a more in-depth look and analysis of the data and came up with what the chief believed were three representative findings of review of that data. What I'd like to do now is turn it over to Chief Smith, if he unmutes himself, and he can walk you through what he found as he looked at the data, and then we'll see if you have any questions on it.
Welcome, council. This is new for me too. I assume you all let me know if my volume's messed up or something goes wrong. It seems like this project started 3 years ago, but it was actually, it's only been a month and a half, the way time has been dragging on for the past month. I'm sure y'all feel it too. Half the time I don't even know what day it is anymore. The three findings. The increases we found in calls for service and police responses, two separate categories, and I can explain those if you wish. The good news is it's all self-initiated activity. Mostly, there is a little increase in calls, physical phone calls we get where we're dispatched, but most of it is vehicle stops, property checks, self-initiated activity where we check out on homeless people, disturbances, suspicious persons, so on and so forth. So that's the good news. Self-initiated accounts for the rise in the calls. The second finding is my personal belief is the self-initiated activity by the officers is helping us on a lot of different fronts. My opinion is because there's policemen out there stopping a lot of cars, going out on a lot of suspicious persons, being present doing property checks, or suppressing possible criminal activity. And I can only point to, because I can't measure a crime that we stop. You can't measure something like that. All I can tell you is, for instance, just a quick stat, y'all seen where we seized almost 40 guns on First Street between March and October of last year. Now, could those guns have been used for a crime, or were they just being carried by the perpetrator? We'll never know. I can't measure a crime that didn't occur. But really, it makes sense to me because we have a lower level of violent crimes and only one officer involved shooting in the last 3 years. When you couple that with the fact that with the number of visitors that come to this community in any given year is in the millions, I don't think that is in dispute. We're the playground for Duval County. We have numerous alcohol establishments and active nightlife. And Duval County, once again, as you've been seeing in the news, is near the top in the state of Florida for per capita homicides. I think our high level of activity is stopping people from coming out here or preventing a crime before it happens. And once again, I can't measure that. I can only look to the news and my talks with the sheriff, his people that work for him, and some people at the state attorneys. They had 134 shot spotter activations, not more than 10 miles from here in March. That's not 134 shots. That's 134 activations with multiple shots. 55 people shot in March. And the homicide rates, where it's dropping everywhere else in the country, has increased by 17%. I sent out a news you can use yesterday, and it had a lot of what Melissa Nelson talked about, the problems we're facing in this county. And I think a lot of it is geographically, you can only come across 3 or 4 bridges, and that allows us to funnel these perpetrators coming into our city into certain corridors where we can concentrate, make vehicle stops, make suspicious person stops, and prevent this violent crime. So that's the third part, third finding. I really feel like our traffic stops are helping things or suppressing the crime. It's no surprise to anybody that 80% in this memo, I thought it was a little lower. I figured it would be higher. 80% of the people we stop are from Jacksonville. Now, if we're doing a lot of traffic stops, all those people from Jacksonville get out here probably in one way mostly, and that's by vehicle. So when they're out cruising First Street or riding down Beach Boulevard or coming in the city at 3 or 5 o'clock in the morning to do auto burglaries, to rape, rob, and pillage, our traffic stops, our omnipresence, I think, is really suppressing that crime, like I said. So those are my 3 major findings. But if you look through the memo, there's a lot of interesting statistics in there. I don't think anything's going to really surprise you. 40% of our arrests are in the downtown area, as opposed to 22% of our calls for service. So we're, for instance, arresting a lot more people per call for service downtown than we are in the rest of the city. Really no surprise. So we have a well-trained, well-motivated, very active police department. On top of everything else we do, they're really out there giving you your money's worth. And I think it separates us from a lot of other coastal cities that have a big influx from the mainland, because they're so active. With that, I'll be happy to answer any specific questions, or we can get down into the lower levels of the statistics if you wish.
GP, I don't have any questions, but I wanted to congratulate you for today's email about meet and compliment. That's a huge step in continuing this direction, which is vital for our citizens' safety. So well done to you and your team.
Thank you. It is a big deal to me. It may only last till 6:30 this afternoon. But as soon as I got them in here and I had them raise their right hand, I hit send on that email. So it's official. We're full.
Excellent. Excellent job.
Thank you.
Hearing no questions, we can move on to topic 2. And Chief Smith, thank you for your participation tonight. Topic 2 is the City Attorney's 6-month update. And with that, I will turn it over to City Attorney Chris Ambrosio. Chris, when you are ready, we do have graphics of the workstation reconfiguration for Chris Wright and Elise Broche. So when you're ready, just let Jacob know and he'll put those graphics up.
Sure. I hope everyone can hear me. I'm on my city iPhone. Can you hear me, Mike? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. So just so you know, Jacob did a practice today for all of us. It worked perfectly. My city laptop worked perfectly. Everything was golden and suddenly nothing works. So, but just so you know, Jacob, it's not Jacob's fault at all. First of all, thank you, council, for keeping me as your city attorney. It's an honor and a privilege, and I can't begin any briefing without first just acknowledging all the incredible city co-employees that I have, and of course, working every day with Mike and Karen at the administrative level, and then each one of the department directors. It's an incredible team, and all of my daily activities involve almost all of them every day. So it's just a privilege to work with such committed people, brilliant people, and they keep me on my toes all day long because they are working so hard that I want to keep up with their hard work. My agreement calls for an update in the first 6 months. So we originally had planned this well before the COVID crisis hit. But there's three main items under the agreement. The first one is that city council shall meet with the city attorney for the specific purpose of setting goals for the city and for the city attorney and initiating periodic work programs. So when I first assumed the position, the office, I understood the position called for a lot of work to be done on things that probably just weren't properly addressed or fully handled by legal counsel to the city. So I provided you earlier a few weeks ago, basically the major future projects that I'm aware of the council wants us to work on in terms of Mike and I. And then also other major projects that I've identified as needing to be handled. And along with department directors also identifying projects that they need me to work on for them or work with them on. So in that long list, that list is continuously growing. Those were the major projects that I'll be engaged in for many years to come. And it'll take quite a while to work our way through that list, but that is the major projects that I have at least been able to develop at this stage, and it includes the major council initiatives that we're aware of in terms of the charter review, phase 1, phase 2. Phase 1, by the way, is in the works. We're already working on it. It should be coming to council soon for review. And then we'll move on to phase 2 charter review. The land development code revisions are in progress. Other CRA work, those major council initiatives are all in the works, and we will move on with some other major projects. But of course, we've had a transition in the magistrate position, for example, that wasn't foreseen before I came on board. That new magistrate team, which the council authorized and approved, and I appreciate that, they of course would have been up and running by now, and COVID stalled all of that. We weren't even able to have our initial conference with the magistrates, meaning me, the magistrates, our code department, and our code enforcement officers, to organize and prepare ourselves for how those magistrate hearings are to operate. So unfortunately, that's one of the examples of some of the major work that we have going on that was unfortunately delayed. And we have to pick up the pieces again and also redesign ways for magistrate hearings to be conducted, as well as, for example, planning commission and CRA, and we're working on that too. So in terms of other specific goals that the council may currently have, I'm just relying on all 7 of you to share with me any new or additional goals that I may not be aware of that you'd like for the legal department to add to the list. I know Mike and I have definitely laid out the goals. We had a timeline of events and initiatives that we are working on, have already met some of them. For example, preparing the code of ethics, that's already taken care of. So If you have any other major specific goals for me to add and a period as to when you want those completed, we can add those to our initiative lists. So that's actually the first item in the contract. And if we don't want to talk about that, I can move on to item 2 and item 3, and then you would come back around and let you all speak. Item 2 is that the city attorney shall identify the resources, i.e. materials, equipment, subscriptions, staff, and support necessary to provide the services expected of the city attorney's office. And again, I thank you all and Mike and Karen for immediately providing me with all the materials, the equipment, and the subscriptions, for example, legal resource subscriptions that I need, that I live on every day. I have all of the equipment I need. Some of it's just not working tonight, but I have everything that I need. And fortunately, Elise Broche is the new legal assistant. She just started in March, and that was an essential. Again, Chris Wright is incredible, but she has a lot of responsibilities, and I needed a solely dedicated, experienced legal assistant. And Elise is fantastic. So we're up and running. Again, COVID has kind of gotten us off on a track that we certainly didn't expect for the legal assistant to have to deal with. So we're not operating under usual or typical situation. But when we get this behind us, Elise and I will continue on, and everything will be fine. It's working out just fine. I can't identify any other resources that I would need at this point. The honest additional situation that we may need somewhere down the road is if the workload and the projects get much bigger, we may consider an assistant city attorney, but I'm not anywhere near bringing that to the council at this point. COVID threw us off, so we'll review that somewhere down the road. But the third item is that the city attorney shall work with the city manager to identify processes and procedures for requests for and the provision of legal services to the city departments and staff. And Mike introduced a very useful legal request intake form early on in the process. And that is a form that has a fillable set of categories that the departments can enter in information and submit their work items to me. And there's requests as to the urgency. They can identify a due date, an expected council meeting date, or an upcoming conference or date of importance for them. And I can utilize that intake form coming from all the different departments and all the different work assignments that they each end up sending me. And I utilize that to prioritize within the department and then among all the departments, knowing that, you know, GP may give me something that definitely needs immediate attention, and it comes to the top of the stack, perhaps over 2 or 3 items that Parks and Recs have me working on. So Mike's legal intake form has worked very well. COVID, it was the departments were just beginning to get in the habit of utilizing that. And it's critical that I use that because I have so much incoming work that I need organization for the incoming projects to properly handle that. But the department heads were just getting in the habit of using that. And then COVID again threw this all into a different train track. So when again COVID is over, we'll get back on course with that. And otherwise, we certainly, between Mike and I, we certainly have identified the processes and procedures for handling the work. It is it's just the workload that's a challenge to manage. But in terms of procedures and processes, we've got a handle on that. And Elise is going to help control and manage that greatly. She's going to take over and help me manage. So that's going to help me work on projects, stay focused on the projects, coordinate a time schedule, and try not to let them become unmanageable. So there's one other item that I wanted to address that's in the agreement, that I've learned over the past 6 or 7 months that is going to be it's very difficult for the attorney to comply with, which is there's so much work that I do. And before COVID, I was working evenings and weekends, quite frankly, just trying to keep up with the different projects and the incoming work. The contract calls for me to attend planning commission. And overall, in terms of planning commission, board of adjustment meetings, it's going to be very difficult for me to add that on to the list of to-dos on a regular basis. So what we've done is advised all of the different boards or departments or staff to just come inform me if they must need me. If they need me and they must have me available at one of their meetings with the planning commission or board of adjustment. And it's certainly helping prepare them for a special magistrate or representing us at a special magistrate hearing. So if I were to attend the planning commission meetings every single time and prepare with each item that's set for the planning commission meeting every time, I frankly can't add that on at this stage. It's just a little too much. So I have not been attending every single planning commission meeting, and I have not attended every single board of adjustment meeting since I came on in October. But I've attended all of those where any of our staff or departments has asked me to assist them or make any presentation or help them prepare or handle the matter myself for them. So between the city council meetings, the briefings, and all the other additional work and hours and days, I'm just not going to be able to survive going to every single one of those meetings. So I wanted to at least bring that to the council's attention, that I am there and ready for all the departments at any time they need me for any one of those. So that's a little outside of the Section 8 that the contract calls for us to review at this point. But I just wanted to add that so that the council is aware. But I'm more than happy to answer any questions and to talk about the first item, which was if you have any other goals and periodic work programs that you'd like for me to add, I'll be glad to talk about that.
I think currently you've kind of laid out that you're rather busy, so I don't think we need to be adding more goals to the list. We have some hefty goals currently there. I think once you start accomplishing them and knocking some stuff off of that list, then we can reassess to see if there are more goals. But that's just me. We can't give you more hours in the day. Trust me, if there was a way to do that, I would have figured it out by now. So I think that the goals that we set are pretty long-term and they are deep. And I think just focusing on those right now would be a priority, at least for me. I mean, not on top of the COVID-19, but that's just me.
And Chris, I don't have an issue with the bandwidth as far as not attending those meetings, because you and I talked about that during your contract negotiation. We didn't think that was even feasible. I know that came up in discussion and was added in later just out of a concern, but if you're going to prioritize, that should be at the bottom of your priority list, because those department heads and those individuals at those meetings know to come to you and gather the information that they should need for that hearing in order to adequately prepare themselves. And then if the board needs to be advised, then I'm confident then you'll go to those meetings if the board needs advice. But absent them needing advice, the department heads should be able to gather the necessary information from you. So I don't take issue with that. I know that's something you and I had even talked about early on when we started listing out the different things that you were going to be tasked with. That really rated low. So we tried to minimize that in the first place.
Absolutely right. I appreciate that. Yep, I remember that. And again, thank you very much for being the designated council member during the contract negotiations. And you made it so easy. I appreciate it. You're absolutely right. That was one of the topics we talked about. And the way that you just explained it is exactly how it's been happening. There have been occasions where members of the various boards have contacted me with questions. Individually, they contacted me with various questions they had. I was able to assist them I was also on several occasions called in to the actual board meeting being held to address the board as a whole. I've also been called in by our department's directors or staff to show up at a particular meeting to, assist them or to provide legal advice. So all of that has seemed to work out fine. I've also advised the board members individually on particular things such as ethics training and some other public records information training. So I feel like each board member was getting in the habit of contacting me individually when they needed. And then the department heads were comfortable with asking me to show up to help address the board as a whole. It's all worked out pretty fine so far.
Where are you at with making sure that they get an annual training? These are all the members of the boards. We have new board members on there, but just making sure that like together they are all being trained, because they might have been trained, but they need to be refreshed on a lot of that. That was
Yep.
the impetus for making a city attorney be at those meetings, because those are the two meetings that the city gets sued at the most, because the level of training could have been ratcheted up some. So where are we at with making sure that all the volunteer board members are well trained?
Yep. So before COVID, we had in place, we were talking about, meaning me and the department heads that assist those particular boards. We had begun the process of discussing when would be the best date for us to schedule a training seminar. And that was all thrown off. So I need to get back on that and reschedule that opportunity. And I would rather not do it through a virtual setting, because we lose the opportunity to have a much better communication. It's easier in person for me to hand them particular documents and references. So I would like to wait until I can actually sit in chambers with them again. And we are going to do that training. And that was all being worked on in late February, early March. But we will have it. Absolutely.
I would just add, thank you, Chris, for clarifying the how you're addressing the support for the boards, because that was something that was important to me, because I had I watched the board meetings and I listened to what the board members are saying, and there have been comments from time to time. This was prior to you, about how they were grateful that we did have somebody that could advise them during the board meetings, because sometimes there were issues that would come up. So as long as they're able to reach out to you offline, that's great. I just don't want, I don't want us to be in a situation where the board members don't feel supported. And so I think that's great. And I'm glad that they're comfortable doing that. And I'm glad that they're doing that. So, and yeah, I look forward to when you can do the training, because I think that's another piece that's really important, so that the board members can remain comfortable doing the job that they're doing.
Yeah. And I one thing I wanted to add was that when we had recently, I guess it was in the beginning of this year, we had some new appointments that were assigned to the various boards. And some of their names are running blank for me right now, but we did have individual training on the standard laws that they should know about: sunshine law, the public records law, ethics, basic ethics. So, excuse me. So some of the individual new appointees did receive some training in that aspect. But what the training that I'm looking forward to providing is going directly to the procedures and the code and the laws that apply to that body. So that training is definitely going to be taking place. And hopefully it makes things, it clears up questions that they have. But then while we're there at the training, they of course can ask questions during that time. So the training will involve Q&A, open Q&A to everybody.
The only other thing I'd mention is that when I got the list of things that you're working on, I have to say, I don't know how we did this with a part-time city attorney. I mean, obviously there's a lot of stuff that you're having to deal with. So, I mean, I was actually rather concerned about the length of that list because that's a lot of things that you're working on.
Yeah, there are, it is a reality that there was a void in a permanent legal presence within the city. And it reveals itself in particular projects that either weren't handled or weren't fully handled. And then also in each department, there was that void where legal counsel was, it's pretty evident that it wasn't there. But we are correcting everything and getting it all on track.
Chris, I
So-
just want to thank you for all of your
Go
hard
ahead,
work,
Chris.
and I really appreciate the level of competence and stuff you're bringing to the position that you're in. You're doing a fantastic job, and I think you're a great fit for the city, and I do appreciate all the effort and extra time you're putting in.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I work with a great staff. It's incredible. By the way, on the nights and weekends that I was working here, I don't want you to think Mike and Karen and Ann were always saying, leave, you need to go home, you need to take a break, you need to go eat dinner and stop, you know. But also there have been many times that I'm here working and I hear noise in City Hall and I look around and Ashley's working and Rosalind is working. So, you know, it's there's a lot of hardworking people here, you know, and I think, oh, I'm all alone here working on a Saturday. No, Ashley's here working on a Saturday too, or for example. Yeah, it's a lot of hard work everyone's putting in.
I just wanted to concur with my colleagues on the list of priorities. We need to start checking some things off before we add more. And then on the open door policy that you have, I think your relationship with the department heads and with the individual board members is really going to help. Some of that front end, you know, proactiveness will help save your time on the back end. So hopefully that'll keep you out of a lot of meetings that you don't need to be sitting in. I certainly wouldn't support sitting in meetings that you don't absolutely have to be in. And I trust your judgment there. And just through all of the COVID-19 stuff, keeping us apprised of the executive orders and helping us translate those into real life has been really helpful. So I appreciate you doing that work and keeping us apprised of it as well.
Thank you. Yeah, it's the COVID is a heck of a challenge, and Mike's leading the way. It's tremendous.
Just to agree with everybody else, you know, Chris, I completely trust your judgment, particularly when it comes to prioritizing, not making meetings. I mean, fully support whatever you decide to do. You know, you've just hit the deck plates running since you've been on board. And I think you've done just a tremendous job. Definitely your first months would be an A+ with me. So thanks for your hard work. We look forward to continuing to grow the staff a little bit to help support you because it's obviously warranted. And really, I've enjoyed working with you too. Hopefully we're not warming up for the hurricane season, but
Right.
through the COVID thing's been, it's been good. I mean, you've been on top of things and you had the answers, and if you didn't, you got them quickly, and I can't ask for more than that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. It's been a privilege and honor, and it's a tremendous feeling, you know, coming to City Hall every day. And it's hard to explain, but, you know, there's always discussion of, you know, you may feel the stresses of work, but there's a labor of love. So I guess that's what it is. Thank you.
The only thing I'd add, Chris, I mean, I agree. Everything that everyone said, you've done a great job. And I want to thank you for your accessibility, because I know that you've been very accessible when I've had questions. You know, you're obviously working really hard, and we certainly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for all the department heads and staff that make this a pleasure and work with me. And I will be glad to provide any other updates. If you have any questions you ever want to email me individually, I'd be glad to answer any of your individual questions that you may have about my operations or any activities or the status of any of the projects. at any time. Or call me individually, of course, anytime. And then let me just, if there's no more questions asked, then the item that Mike mentioned at the beginning of my segment here is that, of course, with Elise as my legal assistant and her working closely with Chris Wright, Karen has, with her incredible style and taste, she has this design of 2 new offices for the ladies to have their workspace redesigned and constructed. And I think it's fabulous. And I know the ladies are excited about it. So Jacob's going to just put up a little rendition, I think, of the 2 offices that are the concept plans of their workstations. And the plan involves for the ladies to have their offices next to each other because they work together and on projects all day long. So it's in the corner of the upstairs of City Hall where Chris Wright's office is now, essentially, and that's where Elise's workspace is. But of course, with this redesign of that area, they're going to have their own private offices with some really fancy looking amenities, I should say, and it looks nice. But the ladies have indicated that they think that it's going to be perfect for them, and they're excited, and it's going to be great. And
Chris, I don't know if you can see it, but the design is up there.
Yeah, I can see it. And is there another image? Yeah, there you go. So that's right, basically in the area where Chris Wright's office is now, currently on the 2nd floor of City Hall. And I'm staying out of it, but it sure looks great. I don't know how it's just going to work out perfectly, I'm sure. I don't have any style or taste with design, so I stay out of it. I just let Karen do everything. Yeah.
So is that glass and that door, is that basically pointing towards the wall where Karen and Mike's offices are?
Those glass doors will be facing the direction of the mayor's office. And if I understand it correctly, it's going to be a little bit of a frosted glass to give the ladies a little bit of privacy. It'll be these really neat sliding doors rather than them opening up into the hallway, but a sliding setup with plenty of desk space and cabinet. Yep.
Looks good.
All right.
And for mayor and council, for your benefit, this is something that we had on the books going back multiple weeks ago. I went ahead and authorized this as an emergency purchase for the purposes of getting in the queue and getting this work scheduled. The purchase came in at over $25,000. It will be coming back to council for retroactive approval.
When do we expect this to be done?
I'll have to check with procurement, but one of the big things we wanted to do was get on the calendar with the company so that we did not lose time, especially knowing that separation of employees is something critical going forward. And I'm getting I believe mid-May is when it's expected to start.
How does this align with the space?
Space needs analysis?
Yes.
This would basically resolve an issue with regards to personnel in this particular portion of the building. The space needs analysis would still take a look at the entire building beyond just administration. So with regards to administration, as Chris indicated, not ready to make any recommendations for an assistant city attorney at this point in time. We're not looking at any other changes in administration at this point in time. So as far as administration goes, the number of personnel and the space we have would be adequate going forward. However, when we start talking about human resources, finance, IT, clerk's office, planning and development, that's where we have some more immediate issues on the near horizon.
So we're going to be investing $25,000 in this space. And I just want to make sure that this space isn't then going to have to be rejigged to, after a space analysis, to say that, no, we need to reformat that floor, and that's going to be, needs to be included in that reformation. And then we have to put more money into it.
Correct. We don't think we'd need to be touching this end of the building,
Okay,
this
thank you.
particular corner of the second floor.
Thanks.
So when would you expect to have the space needs analysis done?
They've not even started yet. We have that on the schedule for procurement to start sometime before the end of the year. With that being said, with Chris on board and being able to move a lot of the projects that were slow to get off the ground, he's been able to help move a lot of them forward. And that has actually created an additional workflow in procurement. So our goal is still to start the project before the end of this fiscal year. But at this point, it has not begun yet. Jacob, if you could remove the graphic, please. Thank you. Any other questions for the city attorney? If not, thank you, Chris. We will move on to topic number 3, which is staff recommendations for COVID-19 financial relief programs. A little over a week or so ago, Ashley and I got together and started talking about what the financial impacts may end up looking like here in the city of Jacks Beach. And we started having a conversation about what actions the city took following the Great Recession of 2008 through 2010 timeframe. And we started to identify what we thought were viable options that the city could explore in order to perform some type of relief for our community going forward. With that being said, you should have all received a memo with your packet for the briefing tonight, dated April 9th from Ashley to me, providing a summary of what we've already done and what we have for recommendations going forward. This was not done in a vacuum. We also included Karen Nelson, who's the deputy and had been CFO and a department director through the last recession. We also included Alan Putnam as the director of our largest utility here within Jacks Beach to get his input as to what we were looking at and how that might be beneficial. So one of the things, Jacob, if you could put up, we've got some slides associated with this, which may make it a little bit easier for following along. Okay, yep, this is the first slide. So one of the first things we wanted to do was recap not only for council, but also for the public, what programs we already have in place. Things that we've done as the COVID-19 pandemic has kind of blossomed over the past 15 to 30 days. The first is with regards to late fee charges and service disconnections. We are currently stopping those until further notice. We recognize that people may be finding themselves in a financial hardship situation. And the last thing we want to do is start hitting them with the late fee charges and disconnecting power when they may be in a financial hardship. And again, this is something that was in place back in 2008 through 10 as well, and a little bit beyond. The second big one, which you all received an update on going back just a week or so ago, was the Beaches Energy Services bulk power cost adjustment, and the fact that we suspended that charge for the month of April. And that will result in a little over $20 per customer return on their bill. And that's something that we felt could financially be done based on the bulk power cost and what it had actually been over the course of the year. So these are two things that have already been done up to this point in time. Next slide, please. So what are we looking at over the next 30 to 60 days? There's a few actions that we'd like to take, and we wanted to make the council aware of it. Some of it I have administrative authority for, and some of it may need to have council approval depending on which account we'd like to pull from. So the first one is, in taking a look at the numbers, we feel that we can do a second month suspension of the bulk power cost adjustment again for the month of May. We feel that if we do have the ability to do it, we shouldn't necessarily wait until the end of the year as we originally had planned, but perhaps we may want to do this back to back to provide immediate financial relief to those that are hurting from this. The second is expansion of the Customer Assistance Relief Emergency Program. This is referred to as CARE. This is a program that the city funds through BEAM, Beaches Emergency Assistant Ministry. The city programs about $60,000 per year, and BEAM administers the distribution of those funds to individuals or families that find themselves in financial hardship and need some financial assistance in order to either pay rent or utilities and not face an eviction or a disconnect of the such. Of the 60,000 that's in for this year, and we're halfway through the year, BEAM has already expended about 30 of the $60,000 in funds. I spoke with a representative for BEAM the other day, and they indicated that if we were to increase the funding to this particular resource, they do have the ability to continue administering it through the remainder of the year at no fee to us or no charge to us. So our recommendation is to actually add an additional $30,000 into that particular program. So that would bring us from $60,000 to a $90,000 per contribution for this particular program for this particular year. Next slide, please.
Mike, is that residential only for the CARES?
Yes, ma'am.
Ashley, yep.
Yeah, it's for residents only.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you.
Yep. Okay, the next slide speaks to the issue of tenants that we have and what we're thinking might be applicable to do in this particular instance. It is not lost on us that at the national level, the state level, and even at the county level, there are currently a lot of financial assistance that's being provided for small businesses. The biggest issue for the small businesses may be a delay in getting their financial support in order to keep running. With that being said, we do have a couple different types of tenants, and we feel that we can provide assistance that maximizes the most of that. First off is we do have nonprofit tenants, which, as you can imagine, the nonprofits are likely to see a major decrease in their revenues and not necessarily have a mechanism for pulling those additional resources in to continue to provide service to the community where that support is needed. So one of the options for consideration is waiving the April and May rent for our nonprofit tenants. And Ashley can provide you with the breakdown of that if you'd like it. The second is with regards to our restaurants, our food service establishments, and our industrial or commercial tenants that we have in our industrial park. And one of the things that we did going back to the recession, the Great Recession, was to actually suspend the late fees and allow a grace period of up to 6 months for those tenants to get caught up on their rents. I may have mentioned to you at our last council briefing that we had already been reached out to by one of our tenants, one of our commercial tenants, asking for some rent relief. This is something that could be uniformly applied across all of our industrial tenants, and letting them know if they miss a payment, it's not that they're off the hook on the payment, but they do have a grace period in which to pay that back and get caught back up. The one area that we did not feel that that any type of a rent subsidy or rent benefit was needed was with regards to our water towers and our antenna. We have telecom tenants that are in a completely different world with regards to their business. There's no people associated with that particular operation. It's a fixed asset mounted onto one of our aerial platforms. And telecom is basically not really being impacted like the restaurants are and some of the other day-to-day business operations that are being restricted for being either essential with restrictions or non-essential and being told they have to shut down. So the areas that we thought could use some benefit were the nonprofit tenants and our restaurants and industrial tenants within our industrial park. So with that, I wanted to see if council had any thoughts or direction that they could provide us with regards to our recommendations going forward. And Ashley and I are both here to answer any questions you may have.
I like all of these, especially the rent with the nonprofits and the grace periods and your previous ones. When this comes in front of council, do you know like what kind of a program by program, as well as totals, as the aggregate of all the programs, what the cost will be? Granted, the city is in a far better position currently to be able to absorb these financial costs than these individual businesses, but that just means that we're going to have to make it up in the long run. So do we have like just a ballpark figure?
I do. Ashley and I went through all the numbers and we took a look at it and we broke it out by category. With regards to the nonprofits, they're just under $15,000 per month for the total rents collected by the city. So if we were to waive their rent for the 2-month window, we would be looking at approximately $30,000 or $29,600 for the rent waiving. With regards to the restaurant and the industrial parks, we collect just about $25,000 a month between the restaurants and the industrial parks on rent tenancy. So if they had a grace period, there's the possibility that we would basically be floating about a $50,000 value for a period of 6 months with the hopes that they would pay it back within the 6-month window. And then again, with regards to the tenants that are on our water tower and monopoles, that's about another $23,000 per month. And we're not looking to provide any fiscal benefits in that particular category. So basically it would be a total of about $80,000 with the goal of getting approximately $50,000 of that 80 back.
Yeah, so a total cost, a true cost is going to be the 30.
That's
which
correct.
is a reason, and the additional amount for the Beaches Energy fee? How much
that's
is
another $21, $22 a month, Ashley? Is that about right?
Yeah, the average residential customer will see about a $21 decrease in their electric bill. Total for the entire service territory, we estimate that we'll give back about $1 million to the community.
Do you know if there's any of the nonprofits or tenants that would be inside of a year left on their lease?
Don't know. We'd have to go back and check their actual lease terms and conditions.
I guess I would just question giving 2 months of free rent if they have 3 months or 4 months left on their lease without the intent of renewing. So I'd want to maybe talk to them about renewing their lease before we gave them 2 months of free rent.
How many nonprofits do we have renting from us?
We have 3 nonprofit agencies.
We have Beam, Sulzbacher, and
The Arc of St. John's.
ARC. Okay. Those are 3 very stable organizations, and I don't see them not renewing their leases after a year. It's not like it's they're small, they're barely making it. So I'm comfortable with the, at least personally, I'm comfortable with the 2-month rent release for those organizations.
I am too. I think those organizations have been renting from us for quite some time. So I'm fine with it.
We can do a double check on our end just to make sure that they're not within the last 6 to 12 months of an agreement and that their intention is to go somewhere else. We'll make sure that they're in the throes of or in the middle of a multi-year agreement with us, or at least a year to year, and make sure that there's still ample time left with them.
The additional 30,000 that we're going to give to Beam for the CARE program, where is that money going to come from?
Ashley, I'll let you handle the options available to us.
So we have a couple different options. One option is we could transfer it from the general fund unanticipated account. A second option is we're realizing a benefit in the power cost for the fiscal year, so we can transfer that from our expected under budget and power costs and give that fund to the CARE.
And that would cover the 30?
Yes.
A nice little benefit.
And Ashley, if you could break out for them which one requires council approval and which one is administrative.
So if we transfer the funds from the general fund unanticipated account, we need to bring that in front of you for council approval because we're moving money from fund to fund. If the direction is to take it from the Beaches Energy savings and power costs, we can do that administratively.
And what else would the Beaches Energy saving and power costs be used for? Would it go back into, like, what, in the past, what we used that fund for, that if there has been leftovers?
When we have a savings in the power costs, we can reevaluate the bulk power costs, which is what we're using the $1 million for. And then any remaining funds just go back into the fund balance to make sure that we have enough operating on hand for 3 months worth of expenditures.
And even if we were to pull that out, there's still plenty with 3 months of operating expenditures.
Yes, we ensure that we had proper fund balance before we put any proposals forward.
Thank you.
Mike, I'm sorry.
No. I support using the Beaches Energy instead of pulling it out of the general. I think we're going to need the discretionary out of the general in the future. And it'll be far more hairy to try and pull it out of Beaches Energy and get it into the general versus just keeping the Beaches Energy in the Beaches Energy and saving the reserves that we have in the general for another 4 or 5 months that we don't know what we're going to be looking like.
Yeah, I agree with Georgette, but off the wall question, when you were talking to Beam, were Landing Beach and Neptune Beach increasing their contributions as well?
I did not ask that question. I was specifically making sure that they had the capacity to administer our program if we increase the dollar funding. Since their administration is pro gratis, they do not take a percentage off the top for administrative services.
Okay.
So general consensus going in the right direction with this?
Head nod.
Excellent. And we'll look at doing the funding for that additional care program administratively, so that way we can do it quickly and get it up and running. We know that we've already got individuals that have been contacting Beaches Energy about being laid off and not being able to pay their bills. So it is starting to hit home very quickly.
So Mike, will you be reaching out to Neptune Beach and Atlantic Beach just to see if they would have any ability to contribute as well?
I can do that.
If you don't want to do that, I can do that.
If maybe you want to do that from a political perspective, Charlie, let them know that we're doing it and see if they want to follow suit.
I got it.
Well, that wraps up the 3 topics that we had on tonight's council briefing. The goal is, again, to use this platform next Monday for our first online virtual council meeting. Probably the only difference is that in the next meeting, Mayor Latham will be chairing the meeting as we move forward. And for those of you who did not see the functionality, there is a raise hand feature. So you have the ability to raise your hand to talk at certain times. But again, we'll have myself and Jacob and the city attorney all on for the next meeting in order to help make sure that we can put up the right graphics and make sure that we go through the agenda with an appropriate thoroughness and with the right public input, that we meet all of the intentions and obligations of state law.
And guys,
So,
I
go ahead.
was going to say, my plan is to run it like a standard meeting. And what I'd recommend is the council use that hand raise function as your normal cue light, and we'll just keep things going the way we normally do.
While we're having a practice round, can somebody tell me where this raise hand function is?
Yeah, I don't see it either.
Click on participants, and then you'll see a list of participants, and then you can see on the bottom that there's a raise hand button, and you click that. And you'll see a hand next to your name.
It also pops
Got
up
it.
on the screen.
Oh, I don't see it on my screen. Do you see it?
What don't you
I
see?
don't-
No, okay, so I see mine. When you click I guess you can see your own hand when it's raised.
I don't
Right.
see
If you
mine.
have all the participants on the screen, if you hit participants, all the participants will show up. So you can see who has their hand raised, who is recording, which is Jacob, whose microphone is on and whose camera is on.
Right.
Yep.
Do you see it, Charlie?
Ooh,
Oh, yeah.
thanks.
Okay.
Okay, great. Anything else, Mike?
That's it. I thank you all for joining us for the briefing tonight. Are you all okay with, you're all okay with using this format for council meeting on the 20th? One of the thoughts is that we do another briefing using this format on the 27th, rather than try to do the briefings and the meetings back to back. Is the 27th something that you'd all be amenable for if you can do it from your homes?
Yep.
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 I'm seeing a lot of heads nodding. Fantastic. Well, again, yes, Chris.
And the intended start time for that agenda meeting on April 20th is?
We'll again try to shoot for 6 o'clock, and we'll try to keep it to about an hour. But I think this is a good way to get some FaceTime with the council, get some items in front of you for conversation and discussion, and continue to give us the direction and feedback that we need in between council meetings at this point in time. But I think to do the briefing in the council on the same night using this technology might be a little cumbersome, especially knowing that the crowds might be different or the public input might be different, switching from meeting to meeting. So if you're all okay with it, at least for the short term, we'd like to do the briefings in the council meeting alternate for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, and just
So we'll do it.
I know, and Chris just mentioned the date. It's the 20th is the council meeting. The 27th is the briefing. So the meeting's at
correct.
7. The meeting's going to be at 7 or 6?
The meeting's going to be at 6. If you remember at the last council meeting, you all
Yep.
adopted a resolution that you could change the meeting time. So our proposal would be start the meeting at 6 o'clock. So that way, if we run into technical difficulties or we have issues, we've got a little bit more time to handle it while in this format, as opposed to having to scrub the meeting early for any way, shape, or form. So
Okay.
the goal would be start the meeting at 6 o'clock on the 20th and to start the briefing at 6 o'clock on the 27th.
And how will the public be able to provide comment as when we're doing it virtually like this?
Chris Ambrosio, I'll turn that over to you if you want to talk about public input methods using the Zoom platform.
Right, and Jacob will have to walk Mike and the mayor through this particular segment of the meeting, but there will be a time, just as we normally do during a particular agenda item, and then the segment for courtesy to the floor, in which either with Jacob and the mayor and Mike, the three of them can work it out as to however the mayor is comfortable with it, but we'll be able to recognize people that have already pre-registered or have raised their hands, and they're being recognized for the same amount of time that we would normally recognize them in person. And they will have the use of this virtual platform, this media technology to allow the council to hear their public input on a particular agenda item or at courtesy to the floor. But Jacob is going to have that all worked out, where it's going to come out essentially as if in the same way it would have in a live setting, where they're still going to be able to speak for their allotted amount of time on an agenda item and a courtesy of the floor. It's going to, Mike and the mayor are going to have to decide exactly how they want to control that. But as the mayor just said, in terms of the other council members, if you raise your hand, I'll recognize you the same way I would if we were in the chambers and you turned on the switch. It's going to be the same, very similar situation, where a member of the public will be recognized either as already pre-registered or raising their hand. We're going to have to get all their information from them, and we'll do that through this technology.
So will there be video capability for the audience, or is it just going to be audio?
I think it's just going to be audio.
Okay.
And I believe Ms. Hoffman has her hand raised.
Oh, I just don't think I put it down from before, but I do actually have a question. Going back a minute to the beam issue where Mayor Latham was going to call the other cities, that was to ask the other cities to contribute to the CARES program.
Yeah,
So,
just kind of coach them along a little bit and see if we can get them to do it as well.
well, Atlantic Beach is on JEA, and I don't know that Beam has the same relationship with JEA that they do with Beaches Energy. So I don't know if that, I
This
know
is for the care.
right?
for the-
Wasn't it for the electric bill assistance that's administered through Beam? Wasn't that what you were going to call them about?
Well, yeah,
But they also provide rent assistance too, right?
exactly.
Correct.
Yeah, so it's not
But
just
we don't
utility.
But we don't contribute to rent assistance. We only contribute through the care program through Beaches Energy.
That's correct.
So I mean, we're at, I guess Mayor Latham was going to ask the other two cities to contribute to Beam's, to it's Beaches Energy's care program that's administered through Beam, but I don't know that Beam has the same relationship with JEA. So I'm just saying it might be a moot point to contact Atlantic Beach. I know JEA
Right.
does have a similar program, but I don't know if Beam, they may, but that.
It would just be my intent to call Ellen and ask her,
Yeah.
you know, what
Okay.
kind of program they had and tell her what we were doing. And just, we have a very good open line of communication between the three of us. So,
Right. And I mean, it would be very easy to find out if Beam also administers for JEA, and then it would make a lot of sense to do that, to have Atlantic Beach kick in for that. I just don't know if that's the case.
okay.
But what about the rent assistance piece?
We don't contribute to that as a city, do we?
We do not.
We do not? Okay.
No, Beam does that through their fundraising
Contribution
and
funds.
philanthropy and yeah,
Yeah.
So I guess that's
other grants.
that would be a question for council. If we put an extra 30,000 in the pot, do you want that specifically to Beaches Energy electric bills? Or do you want that for the full gamut of what Beam offers in terms of assistance? We can make it specific to the care program and specific to the Beaches Energy bills. Or if you want to open it up, we could as well. My suggestion would be that we enrich the pot that we already give them, because I think they're going to see plenty of impact in that particular category.
I think it keeps us in our lane as far as an established program, and we're just helping supplement that, because it's certainly going to be something that is going to be useful to people in need.
Okay. Well, thank you all for coming out for the briefing tonight. Look forward to seeing you at the same time next Monday for the conducting of our first virtual council meeting. Everybody have a good night.
Exciting. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Walk
Mike.
through
Thanks,
your house
Jacob.
safely, and those in City Hall, drive home safe.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a good
you.
night, guys.
Yeah, you
Bye.
too, guys. Take care.
Bye.